Oye in Yolota. We're going to take a look at the basics of spreadsheets, and in particular, we're going to do so through looking at Google Sheets. Now, most of the stuff that we see here is either exactly the same, doing the same outcomes in Microsoft Excel, or has only a slight change to them. So we're going to primarily focus on Google Sheets as it is free and widely available. So I'm here on my Sheets load-in page. If you've got your little, as we call it, waffle, I guess, the little 3x3 grid up here, you can do the drop-down and go searching when you're logged in Google and go over to Sheets and it brings up this page. Now, it does have a list of recently accessed spreadsheets that you could bring back up a spreadsheet that you've recently worked with, but today we're going to start off with a blank spreadsheet. So I'm just going to click blank new. Now, real quick, I want to emphasize this. It's giving me a warning about tables, okay? One of the things that I want to mention on this is be wary of this. A lot of people, when they're new, don't focus on it. You don't want to end up with a whole bunch of things titled untitled spreadsheet. So up here, we're going to come up here, and we're going to give this a useful name. ISAT sheet intro. That way, if I need to go looking for this later, I'll be able to easily find it. That's one of the first things we want to emphasize on this is being organized with your information. Otherwise, you'll wake up one day and have 100 different spreadsheets and never know which one you're looking for. The other thing that I'm going to mention real quick is there's a move option right here where you can actually load up and you can go into My Drive and then choose what folders you want to put this in. So we've got ISAT scenarios, among other things. I can click the side arrow here, and I could go to sub folders on this. For now, I'm just going to keep this in ISAT scenarios, and I'm just going to click move. It's asking me about changing access to it. I'm just going to say move. That should be fine. You can always undo it if that was a mistake, or dismiss, and even if you don't dismiss, it'll go away pretty quick. Okay, that's a little bit on organization. Another thing that I'll mention on this, if you're not familiar with it, is we can share. So I can do share options and copy the link. I can also set it that anyone with the link will be able to access this. I could also restrict it so that people would not be able to access it. But for now, I'm just going to leave it as is. This isn't exactly a secured one. Okay, now that we've got some of the basic logistics out of the way, let's talk about some of the basics of spreadsheets in general. So each of these little boxes are technically called a cell, C-E-L-L, and they have what's called an address. So we have columns, A, B, C, D, all the way up through Z, and then if you go past Z, you can actually right-click and insert one to the right or left. It looks like I chose correctly, to the right, and it'll start doubling up. It'll go AA, then AB, then AC, and if you keep going even more, it'll start looping around to BA, BB. So you can add quite a few of these, but eventually you'll have something so large that it becomes problematic to work with. But these addresses align for columns. We have the alphabetical notations on them, and then we've got rows, which are horizontal. So columns are vertical, and rows are horizontal. Rows are kept track of with numbers, and we can just keep scrolling down. I'm certain there's a limit on this, but hopefully you won't be reaching that limit anytime soon because it's a very large number. The cells allow us to control and reference what information is where. So we're going to talk about cells more when we show a little bit of how to work with some of the math. Okay, I'm going to type in just a few numbers in here so we can show some of the basics. I can type in 1, 2, 3, and I can also do A, B, C. Now, one of the first things that I wanted to talk about was a little bit about formatting, and I'm going to point something out. This is very important. In spreadsheets, numbers are put on the right-hand side of the cell by default, and anything that isn't a number, i.e. text, is put on the left. Now, if I have a combination of numbers and text, let's say that I'm making a measurement in my physics lab, and I want to write down that I measured 13 centimeters. And I hit enter, we can see it's on the left-hand side. That's a clue that the spreadsheet is telling you it does not recognize this value as a number. Okay, I could do 14 centimeters. It does the same thing. This is why normally in science labs, we'll usually put at the top what the units are. So we might say length, and then parentheses, cm. And then that tells us that all the numbers beneath it are in centimeters, so that we can just put in the number. Notice how when I remove cm, it moved the thing over to the right. That's the spreadsheet telling me that it recognizes that as a number, and as we will see later in this video, it can then do math on it or also make charts or tables or all sorts of applications with it. I want to talk a little bit about that on formatting before I showed you a different approach on the formatting. Now, by default, it can be good to leave it the way that it is by default so that you can tell quickly if the spreadsheet knows that something is a number or if it is a letter. But if you're looking to make it extra nice, we can come up here. There's the horizontal align. We can then go with put it in the center, and now we can center all of our items. The downside on that is now we're not getting a clear view on what is and is not recognized as a number, which can work against us. So while this might be a little bit cleaner to look at, that's one thing that you might consider when you're thinking of formatting. Okay, something else that we could do. I'm going to go over here to cell D1, and I'm going to say, let's say that I have a number that is 13.7789456. Okay, so I've got a whole bunch of decimal points on this. I want to keep that entire number. I don't want to change it, but I don't necessarily want to stare at all of those decimal places. I'd like to keep them in case they're important information, but I don't necessarily want to look at all of them. Up here, we can control increasing and decreasing the decimal places. So if I shrink this down, I can bring it down to 13.78, or even 13.8, or even just 14. I can do lots of stuff. But I'm going to do something here. While it looks like I've changed it to 14, I'm going to do equals and select this. We're going to talk about this in just a moment. Oh, looks like it also has that. I can expand it back out over here and we can see that I still have all of those decimal places. The spreadsheet is just, right here when I click on it, it tells me the full value, despite the fact that it's making it simpler on my eyes. So being able to add or remove decimal places without changing the number is very, very useful. You can also change the font size over here, plus and minus. So I can make this bigger, and looks like it is auto-updating the height of the row to help me out with that. I can bold, or italicize, or strike through. I can also change the text color. Okay, I'm going to turn it to yellow, which is super hard to see, but watch, the next one over is fill color. I can put it yellow on black, which actually has very good contrast. Okay. That's a little bit of the basics there. And one final thing with formatting is up here I can do borders. And when you select this, you can choose all sorts of different combinations of borders. I'm going to click this one where it puts borders on all sides of it. Okay, these are all things that you can do to kind of make it look nicer or easier to work with. When you're working with files, and especially on a team, it can be useful to make certain that other people are comfortably able to read and understand what you all have set up. So one thing that I commonly use, which I probably mentioned multiple times in my videos, is anything that's an input that I expect the user to put something in, I will actually color that cell yellow because that was what I was trained in the science lab where I learned a lot of these skills originally. Okay, so that's a little bit on organization. One other thing that I wanted to do in my notes here is to make a comment. So I'm going to show you how to make a comment. You can click on the cell, whichever one you want to make a comment on, right click and go down to comment. Then you can type in a comment. This is an input cell. Place your favorite number here. Or if you've got something that you could say, this is the output from an access report in STK, an important number that we usually get. Or if this is something that you're actually calculating up, you could then put in a comment that describes the equation that you've got programmed in, which we're going to see in just a moment. When you're done, click comment, and it will actually hold it there. You'll see a little colored spot along the top right, as you can see there, and when you hover over it, it will actually say, hey, here's what the comment is with a timestamp and whoever made it. If you need to change that, you can always do the 3 dots here and either edit or I'm going to go ahead and delete it. Delete that comment. Okay. Commenting can be exceedingly important, especially if you have a complex spreadsheet doing a lot of things. Comments are a great way to include extra information, but they kind of hide off on the side. You have to hover over the thing in order to see it, so you're not cluttering up the screen. Okay. Next thing that I'm going to show you is some basic math. Okay, let's say that I've got 2 and 5 here, And one of the things I want to do is maybe add those together. Well, the first thing that we need to do to get a spreadsheet to do math for us is the first thing that we hit is the equal sign. That tells the spreadsheet, I want you to do math. It's already recommending that I do the sum function, which a summation is when you add things up. I'm going to start off with the very basic. I'm going to click on F1, that's my 2, and then G1, that's my 5, and I hit the plus sign between those two. So I clicked on one, hit the plus sign, then clicked on the other. And when I hit enter, we end up with, hey, it found the sum, the addition of 2 plus 5. I could also instead say, let's see, F1 minus G1. And I could get 2 minus 5 is negative 3. We can also go through, I'll show you real quick, and do the multiplication. 2 times, and to do times, you do Shift 8 or the little star button. And I get 2 times 5 is 10. We could also go through and we could do divide. One thing that I want to show is some of the pre-made functions in here, because math is where spreadsheets really excel. I'm going to type in 25, and let's say that I want to find the square root of 25. Well, I can do that. I can do equals, and I start typing it. I can see SQ, and it tells me, oh, do you want to bring up a square root function? In other words, taking the square root. So I do want to do that, so it's SQRT, and then open parentheses, and then I select whatever I want to take the square root of, and hit enter. It gives me 5. Okay, if I do 36 and 49, for instance, I could do those, and watch what happens. I could go through and I could try and teach it the same thing over and over again, but the next thing I want to show you is this. We've taught the spreadsheet some math, so instead of retyping it each time, I can actually grab this little circle on the bottom right. In Excel, it's a little square, but in either case, click on it and drag it down. When you do that, it will actually go through and do the exact same thing, but if you move down, it will follow you down. And if you move to the side, it will follow you to the side. So we can see that I got the square root of 36 here and the square root of 49 here. Let's do 51. So I don't necessarily have something that will become a nice integer. The square root of 51, at least one of the answers, is positive 7.141428, etc., etc. And again, if that's too many decimal places to look at, we can click this to lower it down. Okay, so that's a little bit about basic math and being able to teach an equation to a spreadsheet and then drag it down. So for instance, if I had my next set of numbers were 6 and 14, I could come over here and I've taught all this math to the spreadsheet. I can highlight multiple cells by holding down Shift or dragging across them. And now I can drag these down too, and I get that the sum of these is 20. The difference, 6 minus 14, is negative 8. And the product of them, 6 times 14, is 84. This is very, very useful and one of the key things that makes spreadsheets so useful, their ability to do math. Okay, let's see one of the other things that I really like on this. We can actually, down here we have a sheet, intro stuff. Let's try adding a sheet. So sometimes you've got different sets of information and it could be useful to, instead of having to scroll down and put it way down farther, we could actually make a second sheet inside this one file. Let's say that I'm doing a bunch of trials on something. So trial 1, trial, not 22, 2, 3, 4. This could take a while for me to actually type in. But there are a couple ways to actually make this a little bit easier. So watch this. I could put 1 on the very top. And I could then say, all right, spreadsheet, I want you to take whatever is above you. I'm going to click above, and I want you to add 1 onto that. Okay. It tries to read my mind, and it's bad at it, so I'm just going to tell it no. But now that I've taught it that it takes the thing above it and adds 1 to it, I can now drag this down, and now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I could drag this down to hundreds of them, and it would have taken me longer than this entire video to type those out. Now, you can also, anyone who's actually very familiar with spreadsheets was probably already saying, hey, Sanchez, you can, I believe it's hold down control. Yeah, it's hold down control. If I put in 1 and I hold down control while I click on this, I can drag down and get the exact same outcome. Well, one thing that I'll bring up on this is, while that is a certainly good way of doing it, and if I were doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that would be awesome, but what if I were doing, say, 10, and I wanted to add 10 each time. So if I did 10 and then drag down with the control, you would see that I would still end up with just 1 added to them. But however, if I instead go, okay, spreadsheet, I want this to be equals whatever it is above plus 10, I can now, instead of going by ones, I could go by steps of 10 instead. Okay, so that's a bit on the mathematics of it, and being able to drag things down, and the multiple tabs. Okay, we're mostly reaching the end of what I wanted to do in this quite a few topics all in one thing. Oh, down here, I've got it as sheet 2. I could say that this is math stuff, and then hit enter on that. And then one other thing that I can do is I could do the following. I could come over here and I could hit equals and maybe take, I want one of these numbers from over here, maybe 120. I'm going to click on it, and you'll see that it not only gives the address B13, but it says the tab that I'm on too, math stuff. And I take that and I'm going to divide it by 10. And now I can see that that's 12. If I come back over here, this is 120. What if I change this to 125 instead? I come back over and it automatically updates to 12.5. So that's a little bit about what you can do with the mathematics on this, and just a real quick overview on a lot of functions in a spreadsheet. We'll be building on this intro video with specific items if you continue on with our materials. Until next time.